Folk Tales. The 7 Kids. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a mother goat. And the mother goat had 7 young kids. One day the mother goat said, "Now be careful, children, because I'm going to the meadow to bring you fresh grass to eat." "Don't worry, we'll be good," the little kids said. So the old mother goat set off for the meadow, and then she shouted back, "And don't let any strangers in, because I won't be back until evening." The wily wolf had been listening outside all this time. Well, he thought, I have my chance at long last. Hardly an hour had passed before the wily wolf went to the window and called into the kids. "Darling children, open the door because I have brought fresh grass for you to eat." The little kids laughed when they heard his gruff voice, "But our mother will only be back in the evening, and her voice is much sweeter than yours." The wolf was furious and ran away until he came to a field full of turnips. There he pulled up a turnip from the ground and ate it to make his mouth dry and his voice sweet. Then he hurried back to the house and called to the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the little kids were about to open the door when the eldest looked out of the window and saw the wily wolf's bony black hand and shouted, "Don't open the door because our mother has white hands, not black." The wolf was furious for a second time. Then he thought for a moment and ran until he came to the village bakery. When he arrived, he asked the baker for a sack of flour to make his hands white, but the baker was busy kneading bread and asked him to wait. But the wily wolf was very impatient and could not wait a moment longer. "I'll be dining on goat meat tonight," and he hurried back to the house. By the time he arrived back, it was late in the day, and he put his hand up onto the windowsill. With his white hand and his sweet voice, the kids were convinced that their mother had returned from the meadow at last. Then the wolf shouted into the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the silly kids jumped for joy because they had fresh grass at last. One kid hid under the bench, the second in the corn bin, the third in the ash bucket, the fourth in the wash basin. The 3 other kids stood petrified in the middle of the room. They were all so terrified that they would happily have hidden in a matchbox, but there was none in the house because their father did not smoke a pipe. Then the wily wolf pulled the kid out from under the bench, the kid out of the corn bin, the kid out of the ash bucket, but the clock door was so small that his long tongue wouldn't fit inside. "Oh, how full I am," he said, and stroked his fat belly. Then the wolf went out to the meadow where he lay under the mulberry tree and soon fell fast asleep. As evening fell, the mother goat returned home from the meadow and nearly died of shock when she saw the door wide open and her little house empty. She began to call, "Kiddie, kiddie, come here." She was sitting and crying when she suddenly heard a tiny voice speak, "Don't cry, mother dear, because I am here." Then the last of her kids appeared, who was delighted to see his mother, but even more delighted to see the fresh green grass. "And where are your brothers?" Then the little kid told his mother how the wily wolf had tricked them. "Oh," his mother said, "so that is who I saw resting in the meadow when I was walking home. Hurry, child, and fetch me a needle, thread, and a pair of sharp scissors." And while her son searched, the mother goat took a rest after a very tiring day indeed. They soon arrived at the meadow, where they saw that the wolf was still sleeping. "Gather rocks, quickly, quickly." Then the mother goat slit the wily wolf's belly open, and the other 6 kids leapt out. "Now let's teach the wily wolf a lesson," the mother goat said, "and fetch as many rocks as you can while he is still asleep." They soon collected a big pile of rocks and packed them into the wily wolf's belly before their old mother stitched it back up again. Then she told her kids to hurry back home because the wolf would surely be in a terrible mood when he awoke. So the 7 kids all ran back to the house and watched from the window to see the wolf awake. When the wily wolf awoke, he was very thirsty and he thought to himself, I shall go down to the stream and take a drink because the 6 kids in my belly must be really thirsty. The wily wolf struggled to his feet and he smiled to himself when he heard the rocks rumbling in his belly. When he got to the stream, he leant down to take a good drink, but the rocks in his belly were so heavy that he fell headfirst into the water and was washed clean away. The wolf floated on the water, and the stream passed right before the kids' house, and they laughed when they saw the wily wolf wash past. But the wolf could not swim and was drowned in the deep. And if that wily wolf had not drowned, my tale would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Goat Soldiers. A long time ago, in a distant land, there lived a poor lad. His mother and father both died when he was young, and he was all alone. He was poor, he had no one, and so the poor lad became a shepherd. He was still tending sheep when it came time to become a soldier. So he went straight into the army from his flock of sheep. He served his 3 years, and when he returned, he was so poor that he didn't know what to do or where to look. He had nothing to his name and hardly any clothes. There was a farmer who owned a flock of 30 goats, who needed a goat herd, who could herd the goats during the day and milk them every morning, noon and night, and keep their stable clean and tidy. The young lad happened to be passing and took the job straight away and led the goats out to the nearby meadow. But the young lad was no ordinary goat herd. He was sharp and witty and had learned a couple of clever tricks during his time as a soldier. So he talked to the goats all of the time and ordered them around in a military fashion until they learned to understand his simple commands. He marched them up and down and by the time he was finished, he could get them to parade around the meadow like a miniature army. One day, the lad saw a rich man in a carriage riding past the meadow, so he drove the herd of goats to the side of the road, where he waved, and the rich man stopped his carriage. The lad said, "The reason I stopped you, sir, is to show you what these goats have learnt to do since I have been their goat herd." The rich man in the carriage was very impressed with their performance and asked, "Who owns these goat soldiers?" "Why, they belong to the local farmer." The rich man was so impressed that he purchased all 30 goats, but insisted that the young lad should go and work for him for a month. Then the rich man invited all of his rich friends to come and see for themselves. "I want to show you something very interesting, something you've never seen in your life before." A gentleman from a foreign land liked the performance so much that he begged to buy the herd of goats. And so the rich man sold them to him. The foreign gentleman reached into his pocket and paid the price, and the rich man gave all the money to the goat herd, who used the money to buy a plot of land, build a fine house, and buy himself some good clothes, and to live a proper life like other people did. And he lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Frog, the Mouse, and the Sausage. A long time ago, far, far away, there lived a little frog. And the frog met a mouse and a sausage. All three began to talk, and they decided to become best friends for life. The mouse did all the cleaning, the frog did all the shopping, and the sausage cooked all the food. And the three friends lived like this for a month and a day. The sausage cooked such delicious food that they were always left licking their lips. And no matter how much they ate, it was never enough, because the food was so delicious. When the month was over, the sausage said, "We should really take turns, so who is going to cook the food instead of me?" "Why not the frog?" they said. So then they made the frog their cook. The frog tried this kind of dish, and that kind of dish, and that kind of dish, and this kind of dish, but he could never cook anything the others liked to eat. He carried on cooking for a couple of days, but then they asked him to stop. "You are a very bad cook, Frog," they told him. The frog felt very ashamed. "Well then, Croak, who will do the cooking now?" So the sausage said, "We'll make it the mouse's job." So the mouse became the cook. And it cooked for a couple of days, but it cooked so badly that it asked the sausage, "Why don't you cook instead of us?" "Yes, Croak, why don't you cook instead?" the frog asked. But the sausage could only say, "I had my turn of cooking, and if you don't want to cook, then we'll have to break this friendship up." But they begged and begged the sausage until it finally agreed to cook for a couple of days more. The frog thought it could learn to cook by watching the sausage. Well, when the soup was nearly done, the sausage pulled it aside, and when it thought nobody was looking, it jumped into the soup. "Aha! Croak. Now I know why the soup tastes so good, because the sausage always jumps into it first. Now I know how to cook." Then the frog offered to cook for them again. "Now I will be the cook, Croak. I know how to cook." So the frog put a big pot of water on the stove and made a big fire to get it good and hot. And it cooked it and cooked it. When it thought that the contents of the pot had cooked enough, the frog didn't wait for it to cool, but hopped right into the boiling hot soup. Well, the water was so terribly hot that it made the poor frog's skin all slimy and wrinkled, and that is where toads come from. Then the frog had to stop cooking because the hot soup had scalded it so. The mouse and the sausage laughed at the foolish frog when it told them the story, and they decided not to be friends any longer. So they all went their separate ways, and they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Rich Man's 3 Sons. Once upon a time, there lived a rich man. One day, one of the rich man's farms burned to the ground, and nothing was left but a pile of smoking embers. The rich man had made his fortune as a moneylender, and one of his unhappy borrowers had burned his home down. The rich man felt terribly sad, and not even the priest could comfort him, as he was sure the man would eventually go to hell because of the cruel way he had made money all his life. That may well be true, the rich man thought. But if someone should burn down my other farm, how will my 3 sons survive? The rich man thought and thought about this until he decided to find all 3 a job. He made the eldest son a soldier because he was very bright. He made the middle son a blacksmith's apprentice. And then he spoke to the youngest of his 3 sons and said, "I think you will make a fine barber, son of mine." The youngest son had no objections, and all 3 agreed to do their father's bidding, as anything was better than working the land. The eldest liked the idea of marching around with a silver sword by his side, while the other 2 were happy that they would not have to hoe or mow now that they had proper trades. The years passed by, and the rich man became old, although he had never been a young man, and he spent all his time thinking how he could one day avoid hell's fiery furnace that had been promised to him by the priest. But the rich man's 3 sons did not have a care in the world. His son the soldier danced his days away, while his son the blacksmith and the barber spent all their days making merry. Then the day came when the sons received a letter saying that they should all 3 return home at once because their father's days were numbered, and he wanted to see his sons. So all 3 sons journeyed home and thought they would soon inherit a fortune from their rich father. When they arrived, the rich man asked his son the soldier, "Well, my son, what manner of soldier have you become?" "Well, my father, the emperor has no finer soldier than I, and I wield a silver sword like no other. The other day, it began to rain while we were on parade, and all the other soldiers got wet, but not I, because I drew my sword and span it around so swiftly above my head that I remained dry." The rich man nodded. "I'm glad, my son, that you have become such a fine soldier, and I have no need to worry about your fortune." Then he asked the middle son, "And you, my son, how do you fare as a blacksmith?" "Well, my father, there's no finer blacksmith in this land or any other beyond its borders. Only yesterday, a coach passed by the smithy, drawn by 4 grey horses. The lord driving the coach said that all 4 horses needed reshoeing, but he had no time to stop. My master stood and scratched his head, but while he stood there, I swiftly shoed all 4 horses, and the coach did not have to stop for a single second." The rich man also noted his middle son's words. "You are indeed a master of your trade, my son, and I have no need to worry about your fortune. And you, my youngest son, are you also a master of your trade?" "You ask me if I'm a master barber, father? Well, nothing proves it better than the fact that I shaved a rabbit clean while it was running yesterday, and I did not cut its soft skin once." The rich man also noted his youngest son's words, and then spoke to all 3. I see, my sons, that you all have the skill to make your own fortunes, and you have no need of mine. And so now I can use all of my money to pay myself out of hell's fiery furnace. Then the rich man called the priest, gave him all his money, and told him to give it to the poor. So the rich man's 3 sons were given nothing for their pains and ran away, never to return. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Bear and the Cat. Many, many years ago, in a land far, far away, there lived a bear. And one day, the bear met a cat and said, "Let us work together, cat, and build a house." So the 2 of them worked together and they built a house in the forest. When the autumn came, the leaves began to fall, and the bear said, "The winter will soon be here. Let us work together, cat, and collect some food." So the 2 of them bought a bucket, went deep into the forest, and filled the bucket with wild honey. Then they got a second bucket and filled it with fat, and carried the buckets up to the attic. The winter that came was a very bleak one indeed, with plenty of wind, lots of snow, and very cold days. So the bear lay down to go to sleep, while the cat watched over the fire and sat comfy in the warmth. But then the cat slowly became hungry and wondered how it could get out of the house so it could climb up into the attic to eat from the buckets of honey and fat. "Where are you going, cat? You will never believe me, but a mouse just came past and invited me to a baptism. The mouse has just had a baby and says it wants me to be the baby's godfather." "Very well, then you had better go," said the bear. So then the cat sneaked up to the attic and ate a quarter of the honey and a quarter of the fat and sneaked back down again. "Oh, you're home from the baptism. What's the little one's name?" "A quarter." "How about that? I've never heard of a name like that." Time went by and the cat got hungry again. "Hey, cat, where are you going?" "Well, you will never believe me, but another little mouse came by and invited me to another baptism." "Very well, then you had better go." "You're home again soon?" "That's right," said the cat. "And what's the little one's name?" "A half." After a few days, the cat got hungry again and quietly opened the door.
Where are you going, Cat?
You will never believe me, but I've been invited to another baptism. Another baby mouse was born, and I'm to be its godfather.
Very well, then you had better go. So what's the little one's name?
Nothing.
Oh my, that's the strangest name of all.
When the spring came at last, the bear woke from its winter sleep, thin and hungry as it had not eaten since the autumn. But everything is fine because we have plenty of honey and fat in the attic. Cat, please fetch some and we'll make delicious pancakes with honey.
Go up to the attic, Cat, and fetch the 2 buckets down.
Oh, but I'm so dizzy. So very, very dizzy. And we all know that cats don't get dizzy, don't we? But the cat was pretending.
Very well, I'll go and get it myself,
said the bear. So the bear went up to the attic and found both buckets empty. I'm going to teach that bad cat a lesson. Cat, you ate everything up, and that is why you said a quarter, a half, and nothing. The cat denied the whole thing and said to the bear, let's make a test. We'll both lie in the sun for a while, and whoever ate the honey and the fat will sweat it out, and then we'll know. So they lay down in the sun, and the cat ran up to the attic and scraped what was left of the fat and the honey from the buckets and smeared it on the bear's fur. Then the bear woke up and looked at its sticky fur and said,
Oh dear, I must have eaten it all. But when did I do it?
When the cat saw the bear, it couldn't stop laughing. And it laughed, and it laughed, and it laughed, and it ran off into the forest. And the poor foolish bear lived unhappily ever after.